And we're very lucky to welcome Kelsey Bialo from the University of Hawaii at Manoa today to talk about ELAN and subtitling. So take it away, Kelsey.
Okay, hi everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm joining from Hawaii today. I'm a graduate student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. My name is Kelsey, and I am excited to be taking you through some basics of ELAN, which is loved by many documentary linguists, and how we can use ELAN to subtitle videos. Just a quick agenda for today. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the ELAN software, what it is, what we use it for. And this workshop will assume no background in ELAN at all. So we'll go through part one, which is just how you set up and create new ELAN files. And then part two, we'll segment and annotate a practice recording that I've given you all in ELAN. And then lastly, we'll learn how to create subtitles from this ELAN file and add them to our video in the Handbrake video editing software. The general structure is I will talk through each of these steps that you need to create your recording, do annotations, etc. And then after I've talked through it with you, we'll give you a few minutes to practice. And if you'd like to use your own recordings, the practice recordings, or just follow along as I do it step by step, you're welcome to do that. But feel free to hold off, just sit back and listen for a little bit, and I'll give you the go ahead when it's time for all of us to practice together. All right. So first things first, I think many of you probably installed ELAN already. I've also provided the link to Handbrake, which is the video editing software that I prefer to use for adding subtitles to videos. You don't have to download this. Feel free to just look along. There are a lot of different softwares that people use, so it's kind of up to you. And then lastly, I have this folder here. This is a QR code to a Google Drive folder, and the link is here as well. I put it in the chat. I can pop it in. Uh, let's see. Can I escape? I'll put this in the chat one more time. In case you want to follow along and do the exercises with me, there is an audio recording, a video recording, and a PDF file in there that you can download to your computer to use later on. All right, so if we're good on that, we can go ahead and get started. So an introduction to ELAN. What is ELAN and what is it used for? So if you're not already familiar, ELAN stands for Udico Linguistic Annotator. It's a linguistic annotation tool that allows you to create, edit, visualize, and search time-aligned annotations of language documentation. So you can work with audio and video data. It was originally developed by the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics in the Netherlands. It's open source, meaning that it's free for anyone to download and use. They just ask, as with most things, if you're planning to use ELAN for any sort of public presentation or a publication, please be sure to cite the software. This is the citation directly from their website. There's more information there as well, but yes, always giving credit where it's due. All right. So what are time-aligned annotations? So essentially, time-aligned annotations match pieces of audio or video data to sections of text. And the text that we provide can be transcriptions, we're representing exactly what was heard, it can be translations into another language, or just general notes, maybe notes on your participants, notes that you want to have for yourself and future research. Many different kinds of text can be integrated into ELAN. ELAN is great because it can accommodate recordings with multiple different speakers who maybe you have 5 speakers, they're all speaking different languages or dialects or varieties. They're using different media. So maybe some people are using spoken language, some people are using sign language. ELAN can actually accommodate all of these different types of recording, which makes it a really useful and adaptable software for us to use. In terms of storage, ELAN uses Unicode, which makes sure that various different fonts and writing systems will display properly across your different files. And ELAN files are XMLs, actually, which is a file format that's really conducive to archiving. So you're creating these time-aligned annotations that are really kind of archive ready. And so these annotations, time-aligned transcriptions, can be used as the basis for many different kinds of language resources and generally files for linguistic analysis. So we can use ELAN to create time-aligned transcriptions that we used to create video subtitles, which is what we'll be doing today. You can also use ELAN for glossing to create dictionaries if you've ever undertaken a project like that, or creating archive collections and large language corpora so that we can visualize and search different languages and different annotations across these large bodies of audio, video recordings, and texts. So the one disadvantage is that it's very clunky to learn and a bit challenging when you first encounter it. I think the user interface is sometimes a bit hard to understand if you're not used to it, but the time that you put into learning it now will definitely pay off in the future. All right, so part one, again, I'm going to walk you through step-by-step setting up an ELAN file, creating and saving ELAN files. No need to follow along on your own just yet. I'll give you a few minutes to do that if you feel like you want to after I've talked through each of the points here. So first things first, when you're setting up ELAN, you're going to be working with multiple different file types. So the files that you'll need at the beginning are these two here, your media files. So you'll have an audio file that should be in a .wav format. And this is your audio recording of the language data that you want to annotate. If you are annotating spoken language data, you must have an audio file. Otherwise, ELAN won't work. It won't have anything to time align to. Next, you can have a video file, preferably in MP4 format. And this is a video recording of the language data. It's optional for spoken language. You can use ELAN with just an audio file. But of course, if you're working with signed language data, the video will be really the core of what you're working with. So once you've opened these in ELAN, ELAN will auto-generate an ELAN annotation file, .eaf, ELAN annotation file. And this is a document where all of your annotations, all of the text is stored. So all of your transcriptions, translations, and it will link directly to your media files. So when you open this file in the future, it will automatically open your media files as well. Lastly, the other file type that you might encounter when using ELAN is an ELAN template file, ETF. This is sort of it's a template, right? So it's a skeleton of an annotation file and where you've already preset all of your tiers. This makes your life a bit easier in the future. I can go into this more later. It's not a must-have, but if you like working with ELAN, it can be really useful to get yourself started in the future. All right, just a quick note on file naming and storing. So it's best practice to keep all of the files, these multiple .wav, .mp4, all these files that are associated with one recording that you have. It's helpful to keep them in the same folder or working directory in your computer. This way, when you open ELAN, it knows exactly where to pull all of your files from. It doesn't have to go searching through your computer and give you an error that says, can't find your media. A second thing is, and this is more just for organization's sake, it's a good idea to keep a consistent file naming system for all of the files associated with one recording. And everyone has different preferences for their file naming conventions. Some people like to include the participant ID or initials, the date of the recording, a one-word description of the recording, for example, Kelsey Pear Story. Any of those work fine. It's really up to you. The one, if you open the Google Drive link I sent with the practice materials, the one I've used today is just practice_audio, practice_video, etc. So yeah, whatever it is, up to you. Keep it consistent. It'll help you later. All right, so once you have all your files organized, you're ready to open ELAN, you open your media files. This is what your main page is going to look like, your main window. So this is a screenshot from the ELAN user guide. It's some random video. I don't know what it is, but up here on the left, in the top left corner, you'll have a video. Beneath that, you'll have this audio track. This is called a waveform. So you can do a sanity check for yourself. If you see the waveform, then you know that you have properly uploaded your audio file, your audio track. And then beneath the waveform, you'll see what will initially open as default. This is a tier. So we'll end up adding many different kinds of tiers. This is one of the beauties of ELAN. I'll talk more about them in a bit. But for now, what you need to know is a tier holds the same a set of the same kind of annotation. So let's say this whole tier is transcription, exactly what's being said in the recording. And you can add many tiers and change the relationships between them, which I'll talk about in a bit. All right, so to create a new Elan file, again, just look on for now. We'll walk through it together in a minute. You're going to go to File, New. It will prompt you with this window to select your files. You'll click Add Media File, and here you'll add your audio and video files, and then you'll click OK. In the future, if you have a template file to work with that already has your tiers preset, you'll be able to click Add Template File and add that one as well. But for now, we're just going to start with creating a new file with media files. So that will open this window that you saw 2 slides ago. That will open this window once you've added your media. And then the first thing that you will do is save your file. So File, Save As, name it whatever you prefer, something similar to your audio recordings, as I mentioned. Then the next thing you'll want to do is turn on automatic backup immediately. So File, Save As, save your recording, and then go to File, Automatic Backup, and go to Backup Settings. So automatic backup is important because the worst case scenario is that you do 3 hours of brilliant transcription and then you immediately lose all of it because you forgot to save your file. And this has happened to me. It's probably happened to most people who work with Elan. Turning on automatic backup really just ensures that even if you forget to hit, Control Save, Control S, Elan will back up your file and save it for you. So you have to save your file first, otherwise automatic backup can't turn it on. You can't turn on, it doesn't know where to save your file. So once you've saved it, turn on automatic backup. It will pop up this window when you click backup settings. You'll click on and 1 minute intervals. That means every 1 minute, Elan will automatically save your file. Okay, so that is our first section. I want to pause now and give you all a chance to practice. If you are working with your own recordings, that's great. If you want to follow along with my practice media on your computer, that's great. Finish downloading that now. But otherwise, I'm actually just going to share my screen and walk you through each of the steps in real time that I just mentioned. So for this portion, we'll finish downloading, open Elan, create a new file with our media files, save a file with a common naming convention, and turn on automatic backup. So this is really just getting us started. All right. So when you first open Elan and you have no media, this is the window you're going to see. It looks like it's broken. It's not. It just hasn't loaded anything yet. So I'm going to go to File, New, Add Media Files. And here in my ELP webinar, I'm going to add the .wav, which is my audio, and the .mp4, which is my video. And then click OK. Great. So I'll do a quick sanity check. I have waveforms here, which means that my audio properly loaded, and we can give it a listen. Oh, am I sharing with sound?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, let me reshare my screen. Thank you. Okay, how about now?
我是 Jimmy，我目前在台湾。
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that confirmation. So this is my friend Jimmy. He has offered to provide a short video for us to practice with today. So everyone say hello to Jimmy. Yeah, so you have your sanity check, you have your audio, you have your video up here in the left-hand corner. And what we'll do is immediately save. So we'll go File, Save As. And I think practice audio works well because you'll see here I have practice audio, practice video. In this case, I will call it practice annotations.eaf, Elan annotation file. So I'll save that in the folder. And don't worry about that error. It's because I didn't save it yet. So now that it's saved, you can see the name at the top has changed, which means that you've properly saved your recording. And now we'll go to File, Automatic Backup. Mine is already checked to on, but you'll click Backup Settings and then make sure this on box is checked. Click 1 minute for your backup interval and then apply. So now your automatic backup should be set. And now we have an Elan annotation file ready to go. All right. So pretty easy, I hope, so far. We'll go back to sort of our next working steps with Elan. And then at the end, if you have any questions, or as we build, if you have any questions, we can troubleshoot. All right. So now that you have your Elan file opened, we're going to talk about segmenting and annotating in Elan. Again, just follow along with me here as I walk you through the steps. So back to our main window, right? We saw this when we opened Jimmy's file. We have a video, we have a waveform, audio, and then we also have this one tier at the bottom. Right now, it's called default. So tiers, this is the next portion that we'll be focusing on. This is where you're going to segment and annotate your recording. This is where the core of the work happens. So an important concept in Elan is this idea of tiers and how the tiers are related. So different types of tiers and what their attributes or their characteristics are. So as I mentioned earlier, a tier holds a set of annotations of the same type. So one tier will be all transcriptions, one tier will be all translations, one tier will be all IPA representations of each of the words, et cetera, et cetera. It could be phonemes, it could be words, it could be morphemes, whatever you're annotating for. So tiers can either be free, independent of the media, or they can be time aligned, which is the core of what we can do with Elan. So time aligned, again, means that your tier is directly linked to a certain time in the media interval. So this is how we'll get subtitles today, and so that they'll appear as the person is speaking in time because of time aligning. So there are two main kinds of tiers in Elan. There are parent tiers, which are your top level tiers that are time aligned directly to the recording. So they link upwards directly to your audio and video media. And parent tiers control the behavior of lower tiers in the hierarchy, or child tiers. So oftentimes parent tiers are sort of like the most important representation of the media, like it's your transcription, it's a direct representation of the media. And you must have a parent tier in every Elan file to be able to build the structure. Later, we'll also have child tiers, which are the lower level tiers in the hierarchy. And instead of being directly linked to the media, they're actually directly linked to the parent tiers. So they're associated with and dependent on the parent tiers. And the relationship between parent and child tiers, how they're associated, is defined by linguistic types, which you don't need to worry too much about today, but I will show you as we set up our tiers. So over here, this is on the right side is an example from a Dorico corpus. It's just an example of how complex you can make tier structure in Elan. So today we'll just be working with one speaker and one language, and you'll only have two tiers, transcription and translation. But you can get as advanced as you want and as complex as you want. So you can see here where there are these knots, these are parent tiers, and you see it sort of branches out with all of these child tiers. So it can get pretty intense. Don't worry about that today. We're going to do something much simpler. All right. So to create these different tiers, the first thing you need to do is on the top toolbar, you're going to go to Type, Add New Tier Type. Again, just look on for now. I think it's easier to look and then do. So you're going to add two tier types for today, a transcription and a translation. So when you click Add New Tier Type, this pop-up box will appear. You'll type in the tier names, transcription and translation. One thing to note is for the translation tier, you want to make sure the stereotype, this box here, is set to symbolic association. And what this means is that your transcription tier will be time aligned directly with your recording. You see this check mark here. And the translation tier won't be time aligned directly with the recording, but it will be symbolically associated with the transcription tier. This means that it's associated to, it's dependent on the transcription tier to tell it where to go in the recording. So that's controlled, again, using this stereotype box. Default, don't worry about it. I will show you how to get rid of it in a minute. So then after you've added tier types, you're going to actually add your physical tiers. So you'll add two tiers, again, one for transcription and one for translation. So instead of type, you'll go to tier on the top toolbar menu, go down to add new tier. You'll be here and you'll want to put in a name for your tier. So this practice of writing transcription -txt- the ISO code for the language, is helpful if you eventually want to use Flex, which is a tool for glossing. This is sort of like standard practice. So I would recommend following this structure unless you have something else in mind. It might make your life easier depending on what other things you're going to use this file for. So I'll type in transcription, txt, cmn, which is the ISO code for Mandarin Chinese, which is what Jimmy is speaking. You can add your participant's name, initials. You can add annotator is you or whoever it is who's doing the actual annotating. And as you add transcription, you want to make sure parent tier says none because we want our transcription tier to be the parent tier. So then you'll click add and you'll see it pop up here. The next thing you'll do is add a translation tier. So you'll type in here, translation, txt. Instead of the language that the recording is in, I'll use the language that I am translating into. So in this case, I'll be translating into English. My participant again is Jimmy. And this time for parent tier, you'll want to select transcription so that the translation tier is a child of the parent tier transcription. And then once you add that, lastly, you'll want to get rid of this default tier. It's just what ELAN creates when you open the file. You can actually go to change and change the attributes of default to make it your transcription tier, but I actually think it's just easier to delete it altogether and create these two new tiers. So you can delete your default tier once you have your other ones set up. All right, so now you should see you'll have two tiers that you've just created. And now it's time to get into the meat of it, get into segmenting and annotating our recordings, which is the fun part. So back on this top toolbar, you'll see there's a button called Options. If you hover over Options, you'll see these different modes. Each of these modes allows you to do something different, slightly easier than other ones. I will only be talking about segmentation mode and annotation mode. These are the two that I use. Some people use transcription mode. There are probably some recordings out there. I can point you to some practice if you're interested in using that. But I think for me, visually, segmentation mode and annotation mode work the best. So if you click segmentation mode, the screen will change to this on your ELAN window. And you'll want to click this top button, 2 keystrokes per annotation. And this creates kind of a game-like function of ELAN over here on the left, where you can hit the return button multiple times and it'll create the boundaries for your intervals. So it's kind of a quick and dirty way to segment the whole recording into these manageable chunks without having to do it by clicking and dragging over a piece of the audio and clicking and dragging over a piece of audio. Once you've created these segments, when we hover over them, as you'll see, I'll show you in a second, you can actually just drag the whole box, the whole interval, which again, makes it really easy to edit. Maybe you didn't do a great job segmenting, you want to edit the boundaries of your intervals, things like that. It's really helpful for that. So that's segmentation mode. I would recommend going through your whole recording and segmenting it before you add any annotations. When you are ready to add your annotations, like your transcriptions or translations, you'll go back to annotation mode. So you'll go back Option, Annotation Mode, and this will take you back to your main window. And when you do this, it's really easy to transcribe from there. So once you're back in annotation mode, you finished your segmenting, you can actually just double click on this transcription tier. I would double click on the highlighted segment here, and it'll open a text box where you can type and then hit enter and it will save it. Because of the way we've set up our tiers, where translation is now associated to transcription, you actually don't have to create a new segment. You just double click on the translation tier and it will pop up a text box for your translation. So pretty easy to just go through the whole recording and annotate as you go in annotation mode once you've segmented everything. I know that was a lot. I'm going to walk you through it sort of piece by piece. It should be a bit easier to understand. But really the core of what we'll do if you're following along on your own, you can first add your 2 tier types, then add 2 new tiers and set the translation tier as the child of the transcription tier. Then you can move to segmentation mode to segment the recording into chunks. And then you can move into annotation mode or transcription mode if you feel like learning it to fill in all of your text, all of your annotations. All right, so I'm going to walk you through this part now. You should be seeing my Elan window. So first things first, we're going to go to type, add new tier type. So tier type name, the first one will be transcription, and don't have to worry about anything underneath it. Click add. So now I've added a transcription tier, and yes, check it is time aligned to the recording. Next, I will add my translation tier, and this is where you want to select the stereotype, symbolic association. Don't worry too much about all of these different types of stereotypes. You can read more about it online. I'm not going to go into it now. I find it a little confusing. So symbolic association is the one you need to know. It'll work well for you. So click symbolic association and then add. So now you've added two new tier types, transcription and translation. So you can go ahead and click close. Now notice this didn't add any tiers because we weren't adding tiers yet. We were just adding tier types. So we're basically setting Elan up to know what these new tiers are that we're going to add. Okay, so now go to tier, add tier. And here is where we'll put in this convention with transcription, TXT, and then the ISO code. So transcription tier I'm adding now, my participant is Jimmy. The annotator is myself, and there will be no parent tier, but we have to change the tier type, right? We just created a tier type transcription. So let's make sure to select that for our transcription tier, and then we can click add. So you'll see it popped up here. It also popped up here on the left side on my Elan window where the tiers are. Good, so it added. Next, we'll add a translation tier. So this one I'll do translation, TXT. I'm translating into English. Again, my participant is Jimmy. The annotator is myself. And for this one, I want the parent tier to be transcription. So I'll select transcription. And the tier type, automatically it filled in translation because translation is the only tier type that has transcription as a parent. It would be helpful if transcription and translation were not such similar words. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but they are. So be sure to keep them straight if you can. And then I'll click add. So now we have transcription and translation, and the parent tier here for translation is transcription. Lastly, I told you can delete this default tier. We don't need it. It's not connected to anything. So here you'll go to delete, select your default tier, and delete it. Do you really want to delete it? Yes. Okay. When you close, you should have two tiers created. So a couple steps, but now your tiers are set up exactly as you want them. So as I mentioned, in annotation mode, where I am now, see, I'm in annotation mode, you can click and drag to create your annotations, but this takes a bit of time. So I would recommend going to options, segmentation mode. And here, if I select 2 keystrokes per annotation, I can actually play the recording and press the enter or return key on your laptop, on your keyboard, to create these annotations. So let's start it, and I'm going to try and segment this recording.
我是 Jimmy，我目前在台湾当一名小学老师，我教授的科目是英语。我喜欢跟小朋友一起互动，所以我在课堂上会准备一些有趣的活动。那我也会跟小朋友们一起跳舞，一起玩游戏，希望让他们可以很开心的学习英语。那我同时也有教美劳课，在美劳课上面，我会简单的用一些英语的句子，带他们一起进行活动，从中学习到一些艺术的课程知识。
Okay, thank you, Jimmy, for he's introducing what he does with his students as an English teacher, as a school teacher. So, pretty easy. I was just sitting here listening to the recording and clicking the return key to create these nice segments in my recording. So you'll see in segmentation mode where I am, if I hover over any of the segments, you can actually move them around. So for example, a little bit later in the recording, maybe I didn't do a great job hugging the audio, right? You want to segment around the audio with a little bit of space, not huge gaps, but just so you're sort of hugging the edges. You can click and drag once you've highlighted this green part, which is really convenient. Another thing you can do, let's say here, I'm a little too close to the end of the audio, I hover over it and I hover over the end, it'll prompt you to drag the boundary. So you can actually really easily change the start and end of your segments in segmentation mode, in addition to just moving them around. If you ever, let's say, don't want a segment, you created this box, you don't actually need it, maybe this was a random noise that you accidentally annotated, you can select it, hover over the green and right click, and you'll be prompted to delete annotation. Likewise, if you in that process forgot to segment this chunk, but you actually need it, you don't have to press play, you can just press the enter key on one side, press the enter key on the other, and it'll do the same thing, create a new segment. So that's my preferred way. It's kind of like a game. You just listen and click. That's my preferred way to sort of quickly and roughly segment the whole recording if you're not too worried about intonation units or transcribing based on a certain set of the audio. So if I go back to options, I can go now, I'm in segmentation mode, scroll back up to annotation mode, and it takes me back to my opening window. So as I said, by the way, if you are following along using the practice materials, there is a PDF with chunk by chunk of what Jimmy is saying. I'm not assuming you all speak Mandarin or are comfortable translating it into English. So all of the sort of the cheat sheet is there if you would like to follow along. So if I select an interval here, I can play just this interval by using this triangle, blue triangle S.
我是 Jimmy，
And it will just play that one
我是
section.
Jimmy，
So I heard what he said. I'm going to double click on the transcription tier and I'm going to type in what he said. For our purposes, don't worry too much about punctuation or capitalization, especially if you're just making subtitles. There are lots of conventions for how to transcribe based on intonation units, where to put periods, etc. We're not going to go into it today. If you're interested, I can point you in the direction of some helpful resources on that later. So I've typed in my transcription and I'm going to press enter. Now, if I want to add a translation, depends on your workflow. You can go and transcribe everything, excuse me, and then add translations later, or you can just go transcription translation. So in this case, he says this, and I am going to translate it. So double clicking on my translation tier creates a text box, enter to save. And that's pretty much the core of it. So we can do that again on this side.
我目前在台湾，
Okay. At the moment, I'm in Taiwan. Okay, and you can keep going and add this for the rest of your recording. Be sure to save often, file save, Command S, whatever your preferred method is. I'm going to go ahead and add a few more annotations. It'll take a minute or two to do this. If you're following along on your side, keep practicing. I'll do this just so that I can show you what a subtitled video will look like.
当一名小学老师，
Okay. And I'll do just one more here.
我教授的科目是英语。
So I use Chinese because I think it's helpful to see that ELAN can format many different writing systems. So even Chinese characters, which some softwares are not super pleased with, works here. So let's say the subject, teach, is English. Okay, so now you have this basic idea. You have your first few transcriptions and translations. And if you're creating a subtitled video, you would go through and do all of them. For our purposes, I think this is enough to just show you sort of what the workflow is like, and that ELAN can work with many different fonts and writing systems. So file, save, always good practice. Okay. All right. I guess if we're saving questions for the end, I can keep moving
Yeah,
along, but if
up
anyone
to
has
you.
pressing questions right now just about that.
So far,
Oh,
I
I
think
see
the
one
questions
about
are more general.
metadata.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so I see one more about metadata. Maybe I can switch back to Elan. Yes, you can absolutely add tiers. Sorry, I just opened the chat and saw that there was something about metadata. So you can add as many tiers as you like. So for something like metadata, that tier might not necessarily need to be time aligned. So if you add a new tier type, as we did before, you can add a metadata tier. You can not worry about what the stereotype is. So it won't actually matter if it's connected to your transcription tier or not. But if you add a new tier type, and then you can add a new tier called metadata, it's still text. Don't need to worry about the language so much in this part. And then you'll be able to select metadata. That's the kind of tier that it is. For if you want, you can have a parent tier to your metadata. You can have it time aligned, but you also don't need to worry about that. So if you add this metadata tier, you can select it underneath. You should also be able to annotation here. Yes. So because it's not symbolic, it's not associated based on symbolic association, that you can actually add a larger segment for your metadata over multiple annotations, not like your translation, which has to be directly connected to your transcription to be time aligned. So yeah, other things you can do if you, now might be a good time, just some bonus round things. If you would like to create an Elan template file. For example, let's say you don't want to go through, you like this layout, you like having a transcription tier, a translation tier, and a metadata tier, but you don't want to have to do this every time you open a new file. You can go to File, Save as Template, and oh, you're seeing my disastrous desktop, sorry. And you can save this as a template file. So practice template, save. Now, when I go to that folder or when I open a new file, let's say I do new, you can actually add a template file. So in addition to your media, you add this ETF file and it will pop up here. And when you open your files, you'll see this tier structure open with your media files. So add as many tiers as you like, depends on what you're doing, right? If you want to add a notes tier, you want to add a morpheme tier, phoneme tier, add as many tiers as you like. You can add a notes tier. Sometimes I keep notes that I have where I have questions about transcriptions that I'm doing. I'll add an extra tier that's sort of just for my own thought processes, things like that. And lastly, if you go up to tier, you should also be able to add participants. So instead of having to type in your participants' names all the time, you can go to tier participant, add new participant, and you can specify who that new participant is. So eventually you can have a long list of all of your tiers here and all of your participants here to add to the recording. So you don't have to type in their names and all their information each time. All right. I think for time, I'll move on. I want to make sure we have time to get to the subtitling, but if there are more questions on annotation and segmentation, that's sort of like the hardest part about Elan. I'm happy to answer those in the Q&A. I just want to make sure we have time for questions. All right. So the last part, what we're here to do today is create subtitles for our video recordings. And like I said, I use the video editor Handbrake. This is just what I've learned to use, but people use a variety of different things. I think the previous webinar used VideoLawn. You can use Handbrake, you can use DaVinci Resolve, iMovie even. There are a lot of different ways to do this, but I'm going to show you the basic process for Handbrake. Okay, so the first thing to create subtitles that you'll need to do is go back to your Elan file. You need to export the tiers that you want as subtitles as a .srt. I think it stands for subtitles. It's your subtitle file. It's a text file for subtitles specifically. So you'll go back to your Elan window, you'll click File, Export as Subtitles Text. It will prompt you to save the file. You should continue using that same naming convention that you used previously. So for example, mine today would be practice subtitles.srt, practice recording.srt, and save it in the same folder with the rest of your recording files. So when you click export as subtitles text, it will pop up this box and you'll be able to select which tiers you want to use as subtitles. This will depend on your personal preference and what you're using your subtitles for. So if I wanted subtitles in both Chinese and English, I would keep both of these boxes checked. If I want to add subtitles only in English, I can just check the translation tier. It's really up to you and depends on the goals of your subtitling here. So check the boxes, check the tiers that you want to use as subtitles, and then it'll ask you to select your encoding. Make sure it's UTF-8. Again, this will make sure that your fonts are displaying correctly. Okay. So now you have a subtitles track, a .srt file. So you'll switch applications and go to Handbrake. And that your window, when you open Handbrake, will be a bunch of colors and kind of like blank color boxes. The top toolbar here, you'll go to Open Source and you'll select your video file. Once it loads, you'll see it here. It'll tell you a bit of information about the frame rate, etc. Don't worry about any of that. Just see that your video that you want is listed here. Go down to Tracks and you'll scroll to Add External Subtitles Track. Once you click that, it'll prompt you to select from your files which subtitles track you want to add. So select the one that you just exported from Elan. See, now it will show up here. It'll say practice subtitles, whatever, whatever. And then here is where you want to pay attention to. So you will probably want to select either default or burned in. Default means that you are able to turn these subtitles on and off. So if you've ever watched a YouTube video and you've clicked closed captioning, or a Netflix show and you've clicked subtitles, you have the option to see the subtitles or not. So if that's what you want for your recording, you'll want to check this default box. If you want the subtitles to be a permanent part of the recording, let's say maybe it's a children's song and you want to have the words available all the time in the video image for the kids to follow along with, maybe burned in is your choice. Again, it's up to you and what your goals are for subtitling. And lastly, you'll click Add to Queue, start the queue, and you will render your video with subtitles. So this is our last sort of pause and practice. I will walk you through it again in Elan and Handbrake. But again, one more time, you'll do export of your subtitles track in Elan. You'll open your video recording in Handbrake, add the subtitles track, and then press Start Render, and you will have a subtitled video. So let's see how this works. So now I'm back in my Elan file. Again, I've only annotated these first 4, so you should have many more annotations for your subtitles. I will go to File, go down to Export As, and then you have all of these options. It's part of what makes Elan so great. You can export to so many things, but for today, you'll go to Subtitles Text. As I said, this pop-up box will appear. For example, my metadata tier, I don't want that in subtitles, so I'm going to uncheck that. In this case, I will subtitle with both Chinese and English. Let's see what that looks like. I'll click OK. I'll save it in my same folder where the recording is, and I will click OK for UTF encoding. All right, so now if I check my files, if I check my files, you should see an SRT file in here. Yep, so I know that it's saved, great. And now I will go to Handbrake. So when you open Handbrake, like Elan, it looks like a whole lot of nothing when you first open the window. You'll go to Open Source. I'm in my folder, click my video file, right? Familiar video, same one that we were using in Elan. This one is in MP4. That's what I recommend for compatibility across a variety of different softwares, but Handbrake itself, it is a video editor. It will take .mov and a couple other video types. So not to worry if it's something different. Now I will go to subtitles in this bar here. Click subtitles, click tracks, add external subtitles track. And notice I'm on a Mac. The only one that it highlights is the SRT file. That's the only compatible file type for subtitling. So now we see my practice annotation subtitle file. I'll show you what default looks like for now. Language is tricky. If your language is here, I recommend trying to see if it subtitles well for your language. I stick with English. Usually if I'm working with a language that isn't on this list, I've never tried it with Chinese. I don't think now is the time, but I'll stick with English. This you don't need to worry so much about because your subtitles are already time aligned because you were working in Elan. So that would probably look a little different if you were just adding a text file and asking Handbrake to align it, but ours are already time aligned, so don't worry too much about the language setting. And yes, you want to make sure encoding is UTF-8. Lastly, what do you want it to save as? I'm going to say practice video subtitled, and I want to save it in this same folder. All right, so I will click add to queue, start queue. You can see it's running down here. All right, and then that should have saved the file. So now when I go to this video, my subtitled video, let's see if our subtitling worked.
我是 Jimmy。
Okay, so if you select default, you should have this text bubble thing appear here. You'll click that and click the language that you've selected. So in this case, I rendered it for English, so we'll click that and let's see.
我是 Jimmy， 我目前在台湾当一名小学老师，我教授的科目是英语。
All right, so you have a subtitled video. A couple things. If I turn subtitles off, I can still watch the
我目前在
video
台湾，
perfectly regularly. You'll notice that the subtitles, if I have them on, appear as he's saying the sentence. This is the beauty of time aligning subtitles and time aligning transcriptions to create subtitles.
我是 Jimmy， 我目前在台湾当一
They disappear.
名小学老师，
They disappear.
教授的科目是英语。
Right, so they're only appearing when he's talking. If you wanted them to be there for longer than his sentence, that would be something that you can adjust in Elan. You can make your segments a bit longer. And if you wanted them burned in, they will format in like a white text, maybe. We can even try, if we have a minute, we can try and see what that looks like. So instead of default, I'll click burned in, subtitled 2. Let's see what that looks like. Right, let's see what burned in looks like. So now notice there's no text box here. There's no option to turn them off because they are now part of the video image.
我是 Jimmy， 我目前在台湾当一名小学老师，我教授的科目是英语。
So kind of a different feel to those subtitles, right? They look a little bit more like maybe a learning video rather than a video that you'll just watch casually on YouTube. It's really up to you. It's your preference, what you want your subtitles, what purpose you want them to serve, and what you want your final subtitle video to look like. All right. Lastly, there are so many resources out there for subtitling with Elan, for learning how to use Elan, generally speaking. ELP has hosted many years of wonderful webinars. I've seen many of them, watch them. There's an Elan user guide. Really, if you Google Elan annotation tool, tons of resources will come up on YouTube. I've also, in the Google Drive link that I shared at the beginning, I've put a PDF of these slides, so maybe we can also put the recording there, have everything all together you can look back to. And yeah, thank you so much for bearing with me. I know it's a lot of information, and thank you ELP and LDTC for having me. And I'm happy to take questions. We can do some troubleshooting.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kelsey. We have some questions from the chat. So first question, probably a very common one. Do you have any tips or recommendations for creating and keeping a consistent file naming system?
Yes, I have tips only from doing it badly many times. If I'm doing recordings, I like to have the date of the recording and the participant ID. Um, I also will have, if it's one session, I'll have multiple like O1, 001, 002, so that you have iterations. I learned recently a trick from a professor to every time you edit your Elan file, rename the file as, whatever the name was, and then the date that you last worked on it. And so this way, rather than having version 1, version 2, version 3, you know exactly when the last time you opened that Elan file was. And this can be really helpful because instead of saving over your previous work, if you have multiple versions, you can go back. So let's say you made a change you didn't like and you want to fix it. You can go back to your last version of the recording and revisit the transcriptions you did last Tuesday when you were working on it. So I think that's a helpful tip that I'm hoping to start implementing myself. But yeah, the key is consistency and readability. You should be able to look at your file name and know roughly what it is. It shouldn't be like HXQ274. That's not going to help you. Something that you'll know and something that's easy to keep consistent with many different file types that are just different based on their extension, the file type extension.
Awesome, thanks. Oh, and just a side note, if you're working with an archive, they often have their own file naming structure they want you to
Yes,
use.
great point.
So if you're gonna put those files somewhere, make sure that you're doing it the way the archive wants.
Yes,
Um,
good point.
Another question, can segmentation be done automatically? It's a two-part question. And what's the best practice for when two speakers talk at the same time or talk over each other?
Great question. Sorry, I was reading the chat. Can you repeat the first part of the question, Anna?
Yeah, so can segmentation be done automatically?
This is actually a world that I have not yet ventured into. There is a mode in Elan where you can ask it to segment based on silences. So I can maybe follow up with um, a video that talks about that. I think maybe one of the past ELP presenters has actually discussed it. But yes, there is a way that you can do auto segmentation based on silences. I'm familiar with how to do that in Trot, which is a phonetic software. I have never tried it in Elan, but there are ways to do it. I recommend exploring. If you can manage to figure it out, I'm sure it will save you a lot of time in the future. But yes, so their auto segmentation is possible. I am sorry that I'm not the person to lead you through that. Um, and the second part of the question was, I'm
Best
blanking.
practice for when people talk at the same time or talk over each other?
Yes. Okay. So now you're talking about multiple speakers. You're going to be building many of those tiers, each with their own transcription and translation. Doing recordings of real connected speech is a lot messier than doing this fun little practice recording with these neat sentence chunks. So when you have multiple speakers, um, I will try and go through and segment one at a time and really just focus on the voice of one speaker first, and go through and create those segments and then do that for each of the speakers in the recording. Those are my practices. I don't know if those are best practices necessarily, but once you do that, you'll actually be able to notice where a lot of the segments that you've created are overlapping across those speakers as they're interrupting each other. And when you're still in segmentation mode, you can listen to those chunks and when it hovers green, move those annotations to the right degree of overlap, if you will. Yeah, so it allows you to play with exactly where you're starting and stopping each person's own speech intervals.
And just to make that extra clear for everybody, Kelsey, do you mean that each speaker has their own tier?
I do mean that each speaker will have their own tier. Each speaker will probably have their own 2 tiers or maybe 3 tiers or 4, depending on what you're doing. So the structure that we created for this practice recording, it's just one speaker. And you saw we already had 2, maybe more tiers if I wanted to add word tier or a phoneme tier. So if you have a recording with multiple speakers, you're going to have all of those tiers for each speaker. And that's where it gets helpful to enter your participants in Elan, which is what I showed you at the top of that file. You can add your participants.
All right. So another question. How many languages can ELAN work with? Can it be used to work with any language?
Wow. Yes, I think the answer is definitely yes. It can be used to work with any language. How many built-in languages does it have in the system where you can select, oh, this is the language that I'm working in? I actually don't know the answer to that. I would guess a lot because this is really the tool that people who work with languages use. So my guess is a lot, but no matter what the language is, you can use Elan for it, even if there's not a preset, just like with Handbrake. There may not be a preset language that you can add subtitles for. You can create your own tiers and your own organization system to annotate any kind of language data, spoken, signed. If someone's speaking a constructed language like Klingon, you can totally use Elan to annotate that too. So yeah, it's available for many uses.
Excellent. And I think maybe if you're asking what languages the user interface is available in, I just looked it up. And it's available in Catalan, Chinese, Dutch, English, French, German, Japanese, Portuguese, Swedish, Russian, Spanish, and Korean. So there are a lot of languages you can use Elan in directly.
Yes. Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that
Yeah.
the interface had that many languages.
Yeah. So here's a question that might need some unpacking. How many recordings of dialects of a language or even different languages can Elon do at the same time, especially when you're doing comparative work? And can it do simultaneous comparative results for multiple common tiers, like comparing two phonological tiers?
Interesting. Okay, so you would be working with essentially like a corpus of multiple different dialects, if I'm understanding the question correctly. Um,
Yes, yes.
yeah, I don't see why not. You're gonna end up unless you have one recording with those multiple different dialects being spoken, you will probably have a one Elan file for each of those recordings. So maybe you'll have one Elan file for one dialect, a second one for another one. Um, if you are if there's a lot of switching in between dialects or between languages happening, which is a natural part of all of our speech, you can make separate tiers for that. So I think that would be a really interesting challenge is how to arrange your tiers if you're having people using different languages and code switching, maybe between dialects or languages or just varieties. But yeah, if you wanted to do some sort of comparison, you're probably looking at one Elan file per recording and then creating a corpus where you can actually use Elan to search across them. So that's more corpus research. But I can show you really quick. Let me see if I can exit out of this. In Elan, there is this search function. So you can search multiple EAF. So this is what you'll do if you're looking for different comparisons. Let's say you want to see what this one morpheme, how it's pronounced or spoken by multiple different people in different dialects. If you create a domain with multiple different Elan files, this is for a class I was working with, you can actually search across all of those and find that instance of that morpheme so that you can compare them across these different files. But probably you're having sort of one recording at a time.
Yes, and I just want to give a shout out to that searching across multiple different files. It's one of the most useful things, especially if you have like 400 hours of recordings. You want to go, oh, where was that time that person said that one word? You can just search for it, and whatever file it's in, you will find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have another question. Is there any way to add metadata in Elan? I think you answered this one.
Is there any way to add metadata? Yes. So I usually add a metadata tier. You should be able to add, like you can add participant and participant information. I bet you that there's a way that you can add metadata for a recording, for each recording. I will have to look into that. Can I get back to you about that? I should know that, and I should be able to figure that out.
Yeah, and if you want to just do it simply, I often just add a little bit of metadata about like the person talking in their tier name, like John, age 39, from this town. Like sometimes I'll just cheat and
Yes.
put it in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Or even when you add a participant, there should be a way that you can add a little bit more information in like the notes portion or something. Yeah, but that's a really good point.
A question, does ELAN have the capability to translate automatically, and can it do so for all languages?
Definitely cannot do so for all languages. Does it have the ability to do it? Maybe. It might not be up to your preferred standards. I would not use ELAN for this purpose. I would maybe use a different software. Google Translate, honestly, unfortunately, I hate to plug that, but there are other auto translating or auto transcribing softwares that you can try and use. I would not use ELAN for that. So if you do have like a full translation because you had it auto generated somewhere else, you can create a text file where you automatically fill each of these segments in your translation tier. I can follow up more about that later. It's helpful and it's easy to do, and it works well with if you're using something like Prot, which is a phonetic software. But yeah, I would not ask ELAN to do any auto translating for you if it even does.
Yeah, and if you're trying to avoid Google Translate, I just learned actually from Elwin Huan, who taught last year's ELAN session, about a tool called DeepL. I just linked an article about it, but
Oh.
it's apparently better performing than Google, especially for a lot of like non-major languages. So you can check that out. And we have another question. Oh no, actually, I think you talked about that, about comparing across different dialects or languages. So I think that might be all the questions from the chat. Anybody have any others? All right. Well, Kelsey, I think you were willing to share your email if folks have follow-up questions.
Yes, absolutely. Here is my email, LinkedIn. I don't know if anyone's a LinkedIn person. Yeah, email is definitely the best way to reach me, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions. Yeah, or just send a message to say hi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and thank you again to ELP and LDTC for having me.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. This was really, really helpful. And I'm sure lots of folks will watch again and follow along. So thanks, everybody. I'll
And
stop the recording here.
I'm sorry, can I make a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
But it's related to a different topic. So I heard that the training language data center was hacked, the website that was hacked. So is there a way to have it back? Have you tried to report it, or?
I'll let Kelsey answer that one. Do you know if you're going to be able to get the LDTC website back?
Oh, that's a question for Violet. I am not an LDTC leader. I'm sorry.
I don't know if you're still here, Violet.
Is Violet still here?
Maybe. But
No, I think she logged on.
the LDTC website is now part of the University of Hawaii website. See if I can pull that up for y'all. But don't worry, there is still a website. It's just not the old ldtc.org. So if you want the real one, there it is in the chat. It's part of the linguistics department website now. And that old one is not real. ldtc.org is not actually the right website anymore.
Good to know. I honestly did not know that.
It's terrible. They hacked it and put up a bunch of garbage, but using the LDTC logo, so it looks like it's still the real
God.
website. Boo. But
Boo.
if there aren't any other questions, just some quick housekeeping notes. So again, if folks are asking about certificates, yes, everybody who attended all the sessions or watched the recordings later will get a certificate. I will send out a link next week where you can basically just put in your name as you want it to appear on the certificate. And I think that's just about it. So we'll see. Oh, yes, Peter, go ahead.
Hey, Professor Anna, good morning. Thank you, Kelly, for the wonderful presentation. This question is addressed for you, Professor Anna. On the file, there's an Excel file that indicated that on the last meeting that we're gonna have for this training at ELP, there's a presentation. Are we required to do a presentation?
No, nope.
I thought that was a good question.
Yeah, I'll talk
Being
about that
excited
next
about
week. We'll have some
that.
space for folks to share, like if you want to put together a little document or a short video about what you're working on to share out with other folks in the group. I will talk about that next week, but you don't have to do homework or anything.
All right, thank you.
Okay, folks. Thanks everybody for staying an extra 8 minutes. Thanks, Kelsey, for staying an extra 8 minutes, and we will see you all next week. Take care, everybody.
Awesome. Anna, just a last note. The Google Drive where I had put the practice files, I shared that with you directly. So if there's like a better way to share it with people than that link, feel free.
Awesome. I will put it in the group Google Drive.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.